The massive crystalline chamber of the Galactic Council hummed with tension. Ambassador Chen stood alone in the center of the circular platform, surrounded by representatives from 17 different species. The Korathi delegate's scales shifted from blue to deep purple as he rose from his seat, his forearms spreading wide in what humans would recognize as a theatrical display of dominance. The human colonies have expanded beyond their designated zones for the last time, the Korathi announced, his voice carrying through the chamber's perfect acoustics. Earth has ignored our warnings, violated our treaties, and shown nothing but contempt for galactic law. Chen remained perfectly still, her dark eyes tracking each movement in the room. She had been expecting this moment for months. The reports from the frontier colonies had painted a clear picture of increasing alien aggression, mysterious disappearances of human ships. And now, this farce of a trial. The Vorthan representative clicked its mandibles in agreement. The humans spread like a plague across the galaxy. They terraform worlds meant for others, exploit resources without regard for established claims, and worst of all, they refuse to acknowledge the authority of this council. We have followed every treaty to the letter, Chen finally spoke, her voice calm despite the accusations. Our expansion has been into unclaimed space, following the protocols established by this very council 3 decades ago. Unclaimed by your primitive sensors, perhaps, the Etherian delegate interjected, its gaseous form swirling with agitation. Those sectors were marked for future Etherian habitation. Your kind simply cannot detect our quantum markers. Chen's jaw tightened slightly. Markers that conveniently appeared after we had already established colonies. How interesting that your claims always seem to retroactively cover human settlements. The chamber erupted in angry voices from multiple species. The Korathi delegate slammed one of his arms on his podium. Enough. Your disrespect proves what we have long suspected. Humanity is a rogue element that threatens the stability of our galactic community. What exactly are you proposing? Chen asked, though she already knew the answer. The council chamber fell silent as the Korathi's scales shifted to black. Immediate cessation of all human expansion. Withdrawal from 70% of your current colonies. And placing Earth under the direct supervision of a council peacekeeping force. You mean occupation? Chen stated flatly. Call it what you will. The decision has already been made. Even now, our combined fleet moves toward your outer colonies. You have 48 standard hours to begin compliance, or we will enforce our decision. Chen straightened her shoulders. I see. Then I have only one thing to say to this council. She paused, looking at each delegate in turn. Humanity formally withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. Any aggressive action against human colonies or Earth itself will be considered an act of war. Laughter rippled through the chamber. The Zelani delegate's crystalline form chimed with amusement. You would stand alone against 17 species? Your fleet is outnumbered 30-1. Your technology is generations behind ours. This is not bravery, human. This is stupidity. Chen smiled then, a cold expression that made several delegates shift uncomfortably. You think you know humanity because you've seen our diplomats, our traders, our colonists. You think our expansion is weakness. Our desire for peace is fear. You're about to learn why humans have a saying. Demons run when a good man goes to war. Empty threats from a doomed species, the Korathi spat. Your frontier colonies will burn as an example to others who would defy the Council's authority. Perhaps, Chen said, turning to leave. But before you light that match, you might want to research an old Earth legend. Something about what happens when you threaten a Russian's home. Look up Baba Yaga. The human ambassador walked out of the chamber, leaving confused murmurs in her wake. Most of the delegates dismissed her words as the desperate ravings of a defeated diplomat. The Korathi ordered the attack to proceed as planned, confident in their overwhelming numerical superiority. On the frontier world of New Siberia, Colonel Viktor Volkov received the encrypted transmission from Earth. The weathered soldier read it twice, then slowly smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. He turned to his aide. Send word to all frontier commanders. Protocol 7 is now active. Sir, Protocol 7 is, I know what it is, Lieutenant. The Council wants to learn why you don't threaten human colonies. Time to dust off the old playbooks. And, Lieutenant? Yes, sir? Wake the Baba Yaga. Deep beneath the permafrost of New Siberia, in a bunker that officially didn't exist, lights began to flicker on in sequence. Ancient servers hummed to life, and screens displayed code that hadn't run in over a century. The Baba Yaga project, humanity's last resort, began its initialization sequence. In the Korathi fleet, Admiral Thex reviewed the tactical data with satisfaction. 300 ships against the 40 human vessels defending the frontier. It would be a massacre. The humans had relied too heavily on the Council's protection, never building a proper military force. This would be over in hours. Admiral, his sensor officer suddenly called out, confusion in his voice. I'm detecting unusual energy readings from the human colonies. What kind of readings? I'm not sure, sir. The signatures don't match anything in our databases. And, sir, the human fleet is withdrawing. Thex's scales shifted to a pleased orange. They're retreating already? How disappointing. I was hoping for at least token resistance, but something was wrong. The human ships weren't fleeing in disorder. They were moving with purpose, taking specific positions around their colonies. And those energy readings were growing stronger. On New Siberia, Colonel Volkov stood in the command center as his officers worked with grim efficiency. Status report. All frontier colonies report Protocol 7 active. The Baba Yaga is online and synchronizing with our defense networks. Fleet elements are in position. And our guests? The Council fleet is maintaining standard attack formation. They'll be in weapons range in 30 minutes. Volkov nodded slowly. Send one last warning. Tell them they have one chance to withdraw. The message was sent and promptly ignored. Admiral Thex laughed when he read it. Now they beg? How pathetic. All ships, prepare for bombardment. Let's make this quick and clean. The first signs of trouble came when their targeting systems started malfunctioning. Not failing entirely, just confused. Target locks would shift randomly. Sensor data became corrupted. And navigation computers began displaying impossible results. What's happening? Thex demanded. Unknown, Admiral. It's as if something is interfering with our systems. But I'm not detecting any jamming signals or cyber attacks. Then the lights went out. Not just on Thex's flagship, but on every Council ship simultaneously. Emergency power kicked in moments later, but the damage was done. In those few seconds of darkness, something had changed. Every screen on every ship now displayed the same message in perfect Council standard. You were warned. The Baba Yaga remembers. Get those systems back online! Thex roared. But his crew was already working frantically. Nothing seemed physically damaged. But nothing worked properly either. Weapons wouldn't target, engines responded sluggishly, and their sensors showed impossible things. Like human ships that weren't there moments ago. Hundreds of them, appearing out of nowhere. Admiral, the sensor officer's voice cracked with fear. I'm reading over 1,000 human vessels. But that's impossible. They can't have hidden a fleet that large. Volkov smiled coldly as he watched the Council fleet's confusion on his displays. They're seeing ghosts, sir. The Baba Yaga's illusion protocols are functioning perfectly. How long before they realize most of those ships aren't real? Long enough. Phase 2 is ready on your command. The real genius of the Baba Yaga wasn't in its cyber warfare capabilities or its illusion projectors. It was in how it turned humanity's supposed weaknesses into strengths. The Council thought humans were primitive because they still used certain old technologies alongside new ones. They never realized those obsolete systems were intentionally maintained because they were immune to modern electronic warfare. Execute Phase 2. Across the frontier, hidden installations came online. Weapons that didn't rely on targeting computers or complex electronics. Simple, brutal, and devastatingly effective. Mass drivers that fired purely on calculated trajectories. Nuclear mines that detonated based on proximity alone. EMP weapons that didn't discriminate between friend and foe but didn't need to. Because human ships were hardened against them. while Council vessels, with their advanced electronics, were not. The Council fleet's shields, designed to stop energy weapons and guided projectiles, were useless against simple kinetic weapons, fired from unexpected angles. Ships started taking damage, then critical hits, then began exploding. Admiral Thex watched in horror as his perfectly organized fleet fell into chaos. Return fire. Destroy those installations. But their weapons couldn't lock on properly. Every time they tried to target something, the Baba Yaga shifted their perceptions. Real threats appeared to be debris. Actual debris registered as capital ships, and through it all, those 40 original human vessels moved like wolves among sheep, striking where the chaos was greatest. Admiral, the humans are broadcasting something on all frequencies. Put it through. The voice that filled the bridge was cold, accented, and utterly without mercy. This is Colonel Viktor Volkov, of the New Siberian Defense Force. You wanted to know what Baba Yaga means. It is an old Earth legend. A witch who lives in the forest, in a hut that stands on chicken legs. She eats those who threaten her home. You threatened our homes. Now you learn what happens when you wake the witch. The human ships pressed their attack, and Thex realized with growing horror that they weren't trying to destroy his fleet. They were hurting it, driving his ships into kill zones where more of those primitive but effective weapons waited. His advanced fleet was being systematically torn apart by technology centuries out of date, wielded by humans who fought with a viciousness the Council had never seen. "Order the retreat!" Thex finally screamed, his scales now pure white with terror. But the retreat was even worse than the battle. Ships fled in different directions, their navigation systems still compromised. Some jumped to hyperspace only to emerge in the gravity wells of stars. Others found their jump drives mysteriously offline, forcing them to flee at sublight speeds while human wolves picked them off. Of the 300 ships that had attacked the human frontier, less than 50 made it back to Council space. Admiral Thex's flagship was among them, but only because Volkov had wanted someone to carry the message back. The recording of the battle spread through Council space like wildfire. The mighty combined fleet, scattered and broken by 40 human ships and some antique weapons. But more terrifying than the defeat was what happened next. Earth's response was swift and decisive. The human fleets that emerged from hidden bases and secret shipyards weren't the converted merchant vessels and light defenders the Council expected. They were warships, real warships, built in secret over decades, and at their head flew a new flagship, one whose very silhouette sent Council forces fleeing. The ship was called Baba Yaga, and it was like nothing the galaxy had seen. Part warship, part cyber warfare platform, part psychological weapon. Where it went, enemy systems failed, crews reported hallucinations, and entire fleets found themselves fighting phantoms, while real threats destroyed them. Within weeks, human forces had not only reclaimed their colonies but pushed into Council space. They didn't conquer or destroy. They simply demonstrated that humanity could go anywhere, strike anything, and no amount of advanced technology could stop them. The Council's carefully ordered galaxy was in chaos, and it was all because they had made one crucial mistake. They had threatened humanity's home. In the Council chambers, emergency sessions were called. Desperate proposals were made. Some suggested total mobilization, others sued for peace. But every discussion was haunted by the same question. If humans had hidden this capability all along, what else were they hiding? The Korathi delegate, his scales permanently faded to a sickly gray since the defeat, stood before his peers. We thought them weak because they sought peace. We thought them primitive because they maintained old technologies alongside new. We thought them easy prey because they were few. He paused, looking at the empty space where the human delegation once sat. We forgot that on their world, they were not always prey. They were predators, and predators only show their teeth when the hunt begins. The war wasn't over. In fact, it had barely begun. But already the galaxy had learned a terrible truth. Humans didn't start wars, but they had become very, very good at ending them. And somewhere in the dark between stars, the Baba Yaga hunted, bringing nightmares to those who had thought themselves masters of the galaxy. 6 months had passed since the Council fleet's humiliating defeat at the human frontier. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as humanity, once dismissed as a minor species barely worth notice, systematically dismantled every military force sent against them. The Baba Yaga had become more than a ship. It was a legend that sent hardened warriors fleeing at the mere rumor of its presence. In the depths of Council Prime, the massive space station that served as the seat of galactic government, Supreme Executor Calyx of the Etherian Collective materialized in the Emergency Command Center. His gaseous form swirled with colors of deep concern as he reviewed the latest reports. "Show me the Vorthan Expeditionary Force," he commanded. The holographic display revealed wreckage floating in the void where the pride of the Vorthan military had been just days before. 1,200 ships reduced to scrap metal and frozen corpses. The human force responsible? 18 vessels, led by the Baba Yaga. How? Minister Yevex of the Zelani asked, her crystalline form resonating with disbelief. The Vorthans had the most advanced targeting systems in known space. Their weapons could strike a meteorite from 3 systems away. Intelligence Director Som of the Ixari spoke up, his reptilian features grim. The humans don't fight like we do. They don't engage in honorable fleet battles or follow established protocols of war. They strike from nowhere, sow chaos, and vanish. The Vorthan fleet spent 6 hours firing at sensor ghosts while human stealth ships planted antimatter charges on their hulls. Stealth ships? Calyx's form darkened. The humans don't have stealth technology. We've monitored their technological development for decades. Apparently, they've monitored ours for longer, Some replied. What we're learning, Supreme Executor, is that everything we thought we knew about humanity was carefully crafted deception. They wanted us to see them as harmless. They wanted us to believe they were primitive. The display shifted to show intelligence footage from various human colonies. What the Council had once seen as quaint attempts at preserving cultural heritage now took on sinister meaning. The historical reenactors practicing ancient combat techniques were actually military units, maintaining skills in non-electronic warfare. The cultural festivals featuring old technology were training exercises. The museums housing ancient weapons were actually armories. They've been preparing for this war since first contact, Evex whispered. No, Calyx corrected, his form pulsing with realization. They've been preparing for war since before they left their homeworld. This is what they are. This is what they've always been. We just refuse to see it. On Earth, in a bunker beneath the Swiss Alps, the true scope of humanity's preparation was on full display. The Global Defense Council met in person for the first time in 50 years. Representatives from every nation and major colony present. General Sarah Chen, recently promoted from her ambassadorial role after her performance at the Council, stood before a tactical display showing the entire galaxy. Red dots marked Council military installations. Blue marked human forces. The amount of blue was surprisingly small. Ladies and gentlemen, Phase 1 is complete, she announced. The Council's initial response has been shattered. They've lost nearly 3,000 ships trying to enforce their ultimatum. Our losses stand at 37 vessels. How long can we maintain this ratio? Asked President Williams of the American Union. Chen smiled grimly. We don't need to. The Baba Yaga protocols aren't about winning through superior numbers. They're about making the cost of victory too high for the enemy to pay. She gestured to the display, which zoomed in on Council Prime. Phase 2 begins now. We're going to demonstrate that nowhere in their empire is safe from us. Not their fleets, not their worlds, not even their capital. You're talking about attacking Council Prime? Chancellor Mueller of the European Federation leaned forward. That's 30,000 ships protecting a station with 1 billion inhabitants. We're not going to attack it, Chen corrected. We're going to walk through their defenses like they don't exist. And we're going to do it with a single ship. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Premier Tanaka of the Asian Cooperative stood. General, with respect, that's impossible. No amount of electronic warfare or stealth technology could. Could what? Chen interrupted. could allow a single ship to penetrate the most heavily defended position in the galaxy? You're right. Which is why we're not relying on just technology. The display changed to show the schematics of the Baba Yaga. But this wasn't the warship terrorizing Council forces. This was something else entirely. The combat vessel they fear is actually Baba Yaga 3, Chen explained. One of 17 ships bearing that name, each designed for specific psychological warfare purposes. The real Baba Yaga Prime, is something far more subtle. The schematic revealed a ship that defied conventional design. It wasn't built for combat or speed. It was built to be impossible. Surfaces that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space. Corridors that folded back on themselves. Rooms that were bigger on the inside than the ship's hull should allow. Phase 1 was about fear, Chen continued. Phase 2 is about breaking their understanding of reality itself. 3 days later, traffic around Council Prime proceeded normally. The massive defense fleet maintained its vigilant watch. Civilian vessels came and went through designated corridors. Everything was routine until a junior sensor operator on Defense Platform 7 noticed an anomaly. "Sir, I'm reading something strange on Grid 479. Commander Hexel of the Korathi Defense Force glided over. Define strange. I'm not sure, sir. The readings don't make sense. It's like space itself is twisted." Hexel was about to reprimand the operator for imaginative reporting when every sensor on the platform screamed alerts. Something was there. Something huge. Something that the computers insisted didn't exist, even as visual confirmation showed it clearly. The Baba Yaga Prime materialized like a nightmare becoming real. It didn't decloak or drop out of hyperspace. It simply was, as if it had always been there, and reality had just noticed. The ship defied every law of physics the Council knew. Its hull seemed to shift and change, showing different configurations from different angles. Parts of it existed in dimensions that made viewing them painful. "Open fire!" Hexel screamed, his scales flashing through every color of panic. Thousands of weapons fired at once. Energy beams, projectiles, missiles, all converging on the impossible ship. They hit nothing, not because the ship dodged or had shields, but because it wasn't entirely there. The weapons passed through spaces where the ship appeared to be but wasn't, hit surfaces that existed in dimensions the weapons couldn't reach, and then the Baba Yaga began to sing. It wasn't a sound that came through speakers or communication systems. It was a vibration that resonated through the fabric of space itself. A harmony that made atoms dance to its rhythm. On every ship, every station, every mind capable of hearing, the song played. It was beautiful. It was terrible. It was the sound of mathematics having a nervous breakdown. Crew members began reporting hallucinations. Corridors that led to places they shouldn't. Doors that opened onto star-filled void without decompression. Shadows that moved independently of their sources. The organized defense of Council Prime began to collapse not under attack, but under the weight of its defenders' failing sanity. The Baba Yaga Prime drifted through the defense fleet like a ghost through a crowd. Ships tried to ram it and pass through empty space. Tractor beams slid off surfaces that weren't quite there, and all the while, it moved inexorably toward the station itself. Inside Council Prime, panic spread faster than any virus. Security feeds showed the impossible ship approaching, but each monitor displayed a different vessel. Some saw a crystalline butterfly, others, a geometric puzzle that hurt to perceive. A few claimed it looked like a simple human freighter, which was somehow the most terrifying interpretation of all. Supreme Executor Calyx materialized in the main council chamber, where emergency sessions were being held. "Evacuate the station immediately." "We can't." Minister Evex's form was fracturing with stress. "The evacuation ships report their navigation systems are compromised. They keep trying to fly into the star. Then we make a stand here," War Minister Throck of the Gorathi bellowed, his forearms gripping ceremonial weapons. "Whatever demon ship the humans have conjured, it's still just one vessel. We have millions of soldiers aboard this station." His bravado lasted until the Baba Yaga Prime touched the station's hull. It didn't dock or breach. It simply merged. its impossible geometry spreading through the station's structure like a virus infecting reality. Walls became permeable. Floors became ceilings. Distance lost meaning. A human walked through a wall into the council chamber. Not broke through, not teleported, simply walked through solid matter as if it wasn't there. She was middle-aged, wearing a simple jumpsuit, and smiled pleasantly at the assembled leaders of the galaxy. "Good afternoon," she said in perfect council standard. "I'm Captain Maria Volkov, of the Baba Yaga Prime. I believe you've met my nephew Victor. What are you?" Calyx demanded, his form churning with terror. "I'm human," Maria replied simply. "Just a human who happens to captain a ship that exists in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Would you like to know what your kind look like from the 8th dimension? It's quite fascinating. You're all so much more beautiful than you realize." "What do you want?" Evex managed to ask. Maria's smile never wavered, but something in her eyes made the entire council step back. "I want you to understand. You see, you made a very common mistake. You assumed that because we choose peace, we're weak. You assumed that because we value life, we won't take it. You assumed that because we're young as a species, we're naive." She gestured, and the walls of the chamber became transparent, showing the chaos spreading through the station. But it wasn't violent chaos. Security forces weren't fighting invaders. They were fighting their own perceptions, firing at threats that existed only in dimensions they couldn't fully see. "Humans have a unique trait among galactic species," Maria continued. "We're insane. Not individually, you understand, but as a species, we're absolutely mad. We look at the laws of physics and ask, what if we break them? We see impossible things and say, challenge accepted. We face existential threats and respond with humor." She pulled out a small device and placed it on the council table. "This is a dimensional stabilizer. In about 10 minutes, it will activate and return your station to normal 3-dimensional space. Your people will be unharmed, though I can't promise they'll be unchanged. Seeing reality from 17 perspectives at once tends to adjust one's worldview." "Why?" Calyx asked. "Why show us this? Why not simply destroy us?" "Because destruction is easy," Maria replied. "Any species can build bigger bombs. But to win a war without firing a shot? To defeat an empire by making them realize they've already lost? That's art." She turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Supreme Executor? Your people have been sending fleets to attack Earth. 27 of them. According to our intelligence, you might want to recall them." "Why? What have you done?" Maria's smile widened. "Nothing. But they're all flying toward a planet that isn't quite where they think it is. You see, we've been experimenting with dimensional displacement on a planetary scale. Earth is still there, just sideways from your 3-dimensional perspective. Your fleets are welcome to bombard the empty space where it appears to be." She walked back through the wall, leaving the council in stunned silence. Minutes later, the Baba Yaga Prime detached from the station, reality snapping back to normal with an almost audible relief. The impossible ship drifted away, ignoring the thousands of weapons trained on it, and vanished in a way that made everyone who witnessed it question their sanity. The aftermath was swift and decisive. The 27 fleets approaching Earth found exactly what Maria had promised: empty space, where a planet should be. Attempts to locate the real Earth failed spectacularly. Ships reported seeing it in different locations, always just out of reach. Some crews went mad trying to navigate the twisted space around humanity's homeworld. But worse than the military failure was the psychological victory. The council races had built their entire worldview on the assumption that they understood the universe, that their science was supreme, their logic unassailable. Humanity had shattered that certainty in a way that no military defeat could have. Reports flooded in from across council space. Human ships appearing and disappearing at will. Colonies defended by weapons that shouldn't exist. Technology that violated every known law of physics. And always, the message was the same: leave us alone. In the council chambers, emergency session after emergency session convened. Some members called for total war, others for immediate surrender. The Ixari suggested attempting to duplicate human technology, only to have their scientists report back that they couldn't even understand the theory behind it, let alone reproduce it. "They're not more advanced than us," Chief Scientist Kelm of the Vorthan Technocracy reported. "They're differently advanced. They've developed along paths we never considered because we thought them impossible. Their technology isn't better. It's alien in ways that make our interactions with other species seem trivial by comparison." "So what do we do?" Kalex asked the question that hung over every discussion. The answer came from an unexpected source. Ambassador Stell of the Pacifist Coalition, a minor faction that had long been ignored in council deliberations, stood to address the assembly. "We do what we should have done from the beginning," she said. "We treat them as equals, we respect their boundaries, we negotiate in good faith, because the alternative is continuing a war against an enemy that doesn't fight wars the way we understand them." "You suggest we simply capitulate?" War Minister Throck snarled. "I suggest we survive," Stell replied calmly. "The humans have made their position clear. They want to be left alone to expand into unclaimed space. They want fair treatment in trade and diplomacy. They want what every species wants: respect and freedom. The only reason we're in this war is because we denied them those basic rights." The debate raged for hours, but the conclusion was inevitable. The Council had started a war they couldn't win, against an enemy they couldn't understand. Every military action had resulted in catastrophic failure. Every attempt to contain humanity had only demonstrated how far beyond containment they were. Finally, Kalex called for order. "Send a message to Earth. Tell them the Galactic Council is prepared to discuss terms." The response came within hours, delivered by a perfectly normal human courier ship that somehow appeared in the middle of the council chambers without triggering any alarms. The young human woman who delivered it smiled politely as she handed over the message. "General Chen sends her regards," she said. "She looks forward to productive negotiations. Oh, and she wanted me to tell you that the Baba Yaga will be watching, just to ensure everyone negotiates in good faith." As she left, again through means that defied explanation, Kalex read the message aloud. It was simple, direct, and terrifying in its implications. "The Galactic Council has learned that humanity will defend itself. We hope they have also learned that we prefer peace. Let this be the last lesson required." The war was effectively over, though it would take months for all the fleets to stand down and years for the new treaties to be hammered out. Humanity got everything they had asked for initially, and more: free expansion into unclaimed space, equal representation in galactic affairs, and most importantly, the recognition that they were not a species to be trifled with. But the real victory was psychological. Every species in the galaxy now knew that somewhere in the dark between stars, the Baba Yaga waited, not hunting, not threatening, simply existing as a reminder that humanity had chosen peace not from weakness, but from strength. And in the depths of human space, in bunkers and hidden facilities, scientists and engineers continued their work. Because humanity had learned its own lesson from this war. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, but it was also dangerous. And humans had always been very, very good at dealing with danger. The Baba Yaga was just the beginning. 5 years had passed since the Peace of Proxima, the treaty that ended what historians would call the 17-Day War. Though the actual conflict had lasted months, the galaxy had settled into an uneasy new balance, with humanity now recognized as a major power despite controlling less than 3% of inhabited space. Trade flowed freely between human and council worlds. Diplomatic relations had normalized. The threat of the Baba Yaga had faded into legend, a boogeyman story told in military academies about why you never underestimate an opponent. Most believed the peace would last. They were wrong. Deep in the Void Sector, a region of space considered too dangerous for colonization due to gravitational anomalies and radiation storms, something stirred. Ancient machinery, dormant for millions of years, detected the quantum signatures of humanity's dimensional technology and began its activation sequence. The first sign of trouble came when mining vessel Lucky Strike, operating on the edge of human space, discovered something impossible: Captain Jake Morrison stared at the readings in disbelief. "Run the scan again," he ordered his sensor operator. "I've run it 4 times, Captain. The results are the same. That asteroid. It's not an asteroid. It's artificial. And it's old. Really old." Morrison studied the data. According to their scans, the object was composed of materials that shouldn't exist, arranged in patterns that made his head hurt to contemplate. But what worried him most were the energy readings. Something inside was waking up. "Send a priority message to Fleet Command. Tell them we've found something that needs immediate attention. And Helm, get us out of here. Now." But it was already too late. The object's surface began to shift, revealing itself to be not an asteroid, but a ship. A ship that dwarfed anything built by humans or council races. As the Lucky Strike fled, the ancient vessel sent out a signal that propagated through dimensions humans had only begun to explore. Across the galaxy, similar signals answered. In dead systems, in the hearts of nebulae, in places where no one had thought to look, the harvesters awakened. On Earth, the Global Defense Council convened an emergency session as reports flooded in. General Chen, now bearing the title Supreme Commander of Human Forces, looked grim as she addressed the assembly. "In the last 72 hours, we've detected 17 of these vessels. They're not from any known species. Initial analysis suggests they're mechanical in nature, possibly autonomous, and they're heading for inhabited systems." "Council or human?" President Williams asked. "Both. Whatever these things are, they don't seem to discriminate. The first attack hit the Vorthan colony of Helix 3 6 hours ago." She brought up the tactical display. Where Helix 3 should have been, only debris remained. Population: 40 million. Time from first contact to complete destruction: 17 minutes. Stunned silence greeted this announcement. Finally, Premier Tanaka spoke. 17 minutes? What kind of weapons could do that? "That's the terrifying part," Chen replied. "They didn't use weapons in any conventional sense. They took the planet apart, literally dismantled it piece by piece and absorbed the materials into their ship. The colonists, they were absorbed too." "My God," someone whispered. "It gets worse." Chen continued. "The ship that destroyed Helix 3 is now 20% larger than it was before the attack. These things aren't just destroying worlds, they're eating them, and growing." The human leadership exchanged worried glances. They had spent years preparing for threats from known species, developing countermeasures for every conceivable form of attack. But this was something entirely different. "What about the Baba Yaga protocols?" Chancellor Mueller asked. Chen shook her head. "We've tried. These things don't have computer systems we can hack. They don't have crews we can demoralize. They're machines following a program written before our species existed. The dimensional displacement that works so well against Council forces just slides off them. Then we fight them conventionally? With what? Our entire military doctrine is based on asymmetric warfare. We're outnumbered, outgunned, and now we're facing an enemy that makes the combined Council fleet look like toy boats." On Council Prime, similar discussions were taking place. The old rivalries and resentments were forgotten in the face of extinction. The Harvesters, as they had been dubbed, showed no interest in negotiation or territorial boundaries. They simply consumed everything in their path. Supreme Executor Calyx addressed an assembly that included, for the first time in galactic history, official human representatives. "In 3 days, we've lost 7 worlds, 60 billion lives. Our conventional forces are useless. Our most advanced weapons barely scratch their hulls. If we don't find a solution soon, there won't be a galaxy left to save." The human ambassador, a stern woman named Lisa Park, stood. "Humanity proposes a full military alliance. Complete technology sharing. Joint command structure. No secrets, no held-back reserves." "You would share the Baba Yaga technology?" War Minister Throck asked, his usual belligerence replaced by desperate hope. "Everything we have," Park confirmed. "But I'll be honest with you. We don't think it will be enough. These harvesters are beyond anything we've prepared for. But maybe, together, we can find something that works. The alliance was formalized within hours. For the first time in galactic history, all species worked toward a common goal. Human dimensional technology was merged with Council energy weapons. Vorthan targeting systems were integrated with human cyber warfare capabilities. Etherian consciousness linking was combined with human tactical networks. And in the midst of this unprecedented cooperation, a discovery was made. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, humanity's leading expert on dimensional physics, was working with scientist Kelm of the Vorthans when she noticed something odd in the harvester signal patterns. "Look at this," she said, projecting the data. "These quantum signatures, they're not random. They're reacting to something." Kelm's mechanical eyes whirred as he processed the information. "You're right. They're responding to dimensional distortions. Specifically, the kind created by your Baba Yaga technology." Yuki's face went pale. "Oh no. Oh no, no, no. We triggered this. When we started experimenting with dimensional displacement, we sent out ripples through dimensions we didn't fully understand. We rang a dinner bell." "A dinner bell?" Kelm asked, unfamiliar with the human idiom. "We announced ourselves as a species advanced enough to be worth harvesting," Yuki explained. "These things, they're not random destroyers. They're farmers, and they've been waiting for the crop to ripen." This revelation sent shockwaves through the Alliance. Humanity's greatest achievement, the technology that had saved them from Council domination, had doomed the entire galaxy. But Admiral Viktor Volkov, the hero of the 17-Day War, saw it differently. "So we triggered them," he said at the Joint Command meeting. "Good. That means we might be able to trigger something else." "Dr. Tanaka, these harvesters respond to dimensional signatures. Can we use that?" Yuki thought furiously. "Maybe. If they're drawn to dimensional distortions, we might be able to create a lure. Something so massive they can't ignore it. A trap," Calyx mused. "But what could hold beings of such power?" Victor smiled, the same cold expression his enemies had learned to fear. "Who said anything about holding them? In Russia, when you cannot defeat the winter, you use it against your enemies. Let the cold fight for you." "What are you suggesting?" "The void sector. It's full of gravitational anomalies, dimensional tiers, places where space itself is broken. We lure them there, and let the universe itself be our weapon." The plan was insane. It was desperate. It was exactly the kind of thinking that had made humanity feared throughout the galaxy. And it just might work. Operation Matryoshka, named for the Russian nesting dolls, began 2 weeks later. Every species contributed what they could. The humans provided dimensional technology and tactical planning. The Korathi offered their industrial might. The Etherians shared their consciousness-linking abilities to coordinate the massive fleet. Even the pacifist Zelani provided their crystalline technology for communication across dimensional barriers. The bait was the crown jewel of the operation. Baba Yaga Prime. Modified with every dimensional enhancement the Allied scientists could devise. It would create a distortion so massive that every harvester in the galaxy would be drawn to it. Captain Maria Volkov volunteered to pilot the bait ship, despite knowing it was likely a one-way mission. "Someone has to ring the dinner bell," she said simply. "Might as well be the one who cooked the meal." As the Allied fleet took position around the void sector, the Baba Yaga Prime began its dance. The ship twisted through dimensions, creating ripples and tears that propagated across space and time. The effect was immediate. Every harvester vessel in the galaxy altered course, converging on the void sector with terrifying purpose. "Contact in T-4 hours, the tactical officer reported. "Harvester vessels numbering. Dear God. Over 100 confirmed. More appearing every minute." Admiral Volkov stood on the bridge of the Alliance flagship, a hybrid vessel combining human and Council technology. "All vessels, this is Supreme Commander. You know your positions, you know your duty. Today, we stand not as humans or Korathi or Vorthans. Today, We stand as the galaxy's defenders. Let's show these ancient machines why our time has come. The harvesters arrived like a plague of metal locusts. Their ships, each one unique yet terrifyingly similar, began to converge on the Baba Yaga Prime. Maria Volkov pushed her ship deeper into the void sector, leading them through gravitational fields that would tear normal vessels apart. But the harvesters weren't normal vessels. They adapted, their hulls shifting to compensate for the stress. What should have destroyed them only slowed them down. Phase 2, Admiral Volkov ordered. The Allied fleet attacked from all sides, not to destroy, but to herd. Every weapon was calculated to push the harvesters deeper into the void sector, toward the place where space itself was most broken. Human ships used dimensional jumps to appear and disappear, striking and fading. Council vessels used their superior firepower to create walls of energy the harvesters had to go around. And all the while, Maria Volkov led them deeper, her ship dancing on the edge of destruction. "Captain," her navigator called out, voice tight with fear. "We're approaching the nexus point. If we go any further, we go as far as we need to," Maria replied calmly. "Have faith, Lieutenant. The universe wants to live as much as we do." The nexus point was a place where multiple dimensional tiers intersected, creating a region where the laws of physics didn't so much break as have a complete nervous breakdown. Ships that entered either ceased to exist or were scattered across multiple dimensions simultaneously. It was the one place in the galaxy everyone, human and council alike, agreed to avoid. Maria flew straight into it. The Baba Yaga Prime hit the nexus point and exploded across 17 dimensions simultaneously. The ship existed in all of them and none of them, creating a paradox that reality itself struggled to resolve. The dimensional distortion was so massive that it could be detected in neighboring galaxies. The harvesters, following their programming, pursued. One by one, they entered the nexus point. Drawn by the irresistible lure of dimensional technology taken to its ultimate extreme, and one by one, they discovered what happened when machines that relied on stable physics encountered a place where physics went to die. Some harvesters simply ceased. Others were torn apart and scattered across dimensions. A few tried to adapt, their ancient systems struggling to comprehend a reality that refused to follow rules. Those lasted longest, sometimes entire seconds, before the Nexus claimed them, but not all of them fell for the trap. The largest harvester, a ship that dwarfed moons, stopped at the edge of the Nexus. It had learned, it had adapted, and it turned its attention to the Allied fleet. "All vessels, scatter," Admiral Volkov ordered, but it was too late. The monster harvester deployed weapons that made their previous attacks look gentle. Entire sections of space were simply deleted. Ships caught in the effect didn't explode, they just stopped existing. The Allied fleet, despite all their preparation and unity, began to crumble. Then, impossibly, the Baba Yaga Prime emerged from the Nexus. But it wasn't the same ship that had entered. It was all the ships it had been, across 17 dimensions, existing simultaneously in one space. Maria Volkov, her hair now white from the strain of existing in multiple realities, smiled at the harvester. "You want dimensional technology?" she broadcast. "Come and get it." The Baba Yaga Prime didn't attack in any conventional sense. It simply existed at the harvester with such intensity that reality around it began to buckle. The massive machine tried to adapt, tried to comprehend. But how do you fight something that is mathematically impossible? The two ships collided in a way that wasn't physical but was far more devastating. The harvester systems, designed to analyze and adapt to any threat, encountered something that couldn't be analyzed because it didn't follow any logical pattern. It was madness given form, impossibility made manifest, and in trying to understand it, the harvester broke itself. The ancient machine began to collapse, not from damage, but from a fundamental inability to process what it was experiencing. Its destruction rippled out to the remaining harvesters through their shared network, a virus of illogic that spread faster than light. Across the galaxy, harvester ships stopped their attacks. Some simply shut down, their systems locked in recursive loops trying to understand the impossible. Others fled, disappearing into deep space rather than risk infection by conceptual madness. Within hours, the invasion was over. The Baba Yaga Prime, having served its purpose, finally succumbed to the strain of existing in impossible ways. The ship dissolved, returning its mass to the 17 dimensions it had borrowed from. But Maria Volkov, through means that no scientist could adequately explain, stood on the bridge of Admiral Volkov's flagship. "Nephew," she said simply, before collapsing. The aftermath of the Harvester War changed the galaxy forever. The Alliance held. Species that had been enemies now bound by the shared experience of facing extinction together. Human dimensional technology was regulated but not banned, seen now as both salvation and potential doom. Earth's position in galactic politics was cemented not through fear but through respect. They had triggered the crisis, but they had also ended it. More importantly, they had shown that when faced with annihilation, they would sacrifice everything to save not just themselves, but everyone. The Void Sector was declared a monument to the fallen and a warning to future generations. Automated beacons broadcast in every known language. Here lies the grave of the Harvesters, defeated not by strength of arms, but by the magnificent madness of humanity. Let all who would threaten peace remember, the galaxy is protected, and somewhere in the depths of human space, in bunkers that officially didn't exist, scientists and engineers continued their work. Because the universe had revealed itself to be far stranger and more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The Harvesters had been old, but they weren't the oldest things out there. Other threats waited in the dark between galaxies, things that made the Harvesters look primitive. Humanity had learned its lesson. They would be ready, they would be careful, but they would never, ever stop pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Because that magnificent madness, that willingness to look at the impossible and say, "Challenge accepted," wasn't just humanity's greatest weakness. It was their greatest strength. And it was why, when the next threat emerged from the darkness, the galaxy would once again look to the mad humans and their impossible ships to save them all. The legend of the Baba Yaga had evolved, no longer just a witch in the woods who devoured threats, but a guardian at the gates of reality itself, keeping the darkness at bay through sheer stubborn refusal to accept that anything was truly impossible. And in a universe where thought could shape reality and madness could defeat logic, perhaps that was exactly the guardian the galaxy needed.